You know, every single year, millions of scientific papers are published across the globe. They add to this massive, ever-expanding ocean of human knowledge. Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're going to pull back the curtain on something we all rely on constantly, but honestly, we rarely stop to actually think about. We're setting the stage for a really fascinating look at the hidden rules that govern the very creation of that knowledge. It's a deep dive into the foundations of integrity in scholarly inquiry.
So I want you to think about this fundamental question for just a second. What makes knowledge credible? When you sit down and read a medical study or, say, review the structural data for a brand new bridge, or even just hear about a cool new psychological phenomenon, why do we actually trust those facts? Because we do. We rely on them every single day to make life-altering decisions about our health, our finances, and our society as a whole. And the stakes? Well, they're incredibly high. Think about it. If the structural data on a new bridge is fabricated, that bridge eventually collapses. If a medical trial is faked, people end up getting the completely wrong treatments. That vital, life-saving trust doesn't just magically happen by accident.
Which brings us to Section 1, the moral backbone, safeguarding the integrity of research.
To really understand why we can trust science, we first have to establish what happens when we don't. Imagine a world without any rules for researchers. A world without ethics and knowledge creation is, well, it's a world of absolute chaos. It's a place where facts are basically just opinions in disguise. And that brings us to our core definition of research ethics. These ethics form the actual moral backbone of scholarly inquiry. Their entire purpose is to make sure that knowledge creation is credible, responsible, and perfectly respectful of all the stakeholders involved. And it's absolutely crucial to understand that these ethics didn't always exist in their modern form. Actually, they had to be carefully, sometimes painfully forged out of historical mistakes to protect us. So they're not just some boring bureaucratic checklist. They are the ultimate protection, safeguarding the integrity of the research itself and shielding human participants, institutions, and our society against fabrication and bias.
Okay, let's dive into this a bit deeper. Section 2, Seeking the Truth. The load-bearing pillars of knowledge.
First up, let's break down these pillars, starting with the absolute core objective of literally any inquiry. The very first pillar is honesty. Now, I know it sounds super simple, but it is the absolute foundation of everything else. Researchers must truthfully report their data, their results, their methods, and even their publication status. Imagine for a second you spent 3 grueling years on an experiment, and one single, pesky data point completely ruins your beautiful, elegant theory. The temptation to just quietly delete that spreadsheet row? That is a very real, very human flaw. But honesty demands that researchers never hide the truth, even and especially if that truth completely upends what they were really hoping to find.
Now, what's really interesting about this is the stark contrast when it comes to credibility. On one side, we have truthful reporting. These are the rigorous everyday actions that build scientific credibility and public trust over decades. On the flip side, we have the ultimate destroyers of truth: fabrication, falsification, or selective reporting. If a researcher makes up data out of thin air, tweaks the numbers to look a bit better, or conveniently leaves out results that just don't fit their narrative, it completely undermines all credibility. And the worst part? One fabricated study doesn't just sit there in isolation. It gets cited by 10 other papers, which then get cited by 100 more. It literally spreads like a virus through the scientific community, poisoning the well of knowledge for everyone else.
Right alongside honesty sits objectivity. This means bias has to be actively avoided in the design of an experiment, in the analysis of the data, and in the interpretation of the results. But let's be real for a second here. True objectivity is incredibly difficult. As human beings, we're naturally biased. We inherently want to be right, or, we might be subtly influenced by whoever happens to be funding the project. These rules exist specifically to override our basic human instincts to find what we want to find. True neutrality is what ensures that the findings reflect actual reality rather than just a researcher's personal preferences or preconceived notions.
Next, we have a really vital pairing: carefulness and openness. Carefulness demands sheer precision in data handling, analysis, and documentation. I mean, think about it. You can accidentally hide the truth just through some sloppy math or poor record keeping. Precision reduces those errors and significantly enhances reliability. Meanwhile, openness is all about transparency. It's about willingly, enthusiastically sharing your findings, your methods, and even your critiques with the broader community. This is incredibly relevant today when we talk about the replication crisis in modern science. If a study's methodology is hidden away in a black box and literally no one else can replicate the results, well, it's virtually useless. Openness advances our collective knowledge and allows other scientists to double-check and replicate the work, which is the absolute gold standard for proving a study is actually valid.
Let's move on and see how this builds. Section 3,
Protecting people and ideas. Integrity in action.
Because research isn't just about cold, hard data and sterile labs, right? It's deeply about how researchers interact with human subjects and their collaborators. There are three crucial principles of respect here. First, integrity itself, which is defined as the consistency between your actions and your principles. It means upholding and honoring the commitments you've made to your participants, your institutions, and your team. Second is intellectual property. You absolutely have to acknowledge your sources. Avoiding plagiarism ensures fairness and properly recognizes the hard work of others. And third, confidentiality. Sensitive information must be fiercely protected. For example, imagine a participant volunteering for a highly sensitive psychological study about their past trauma. Ensuring their complete privacy and safeguarding that personal data is just as vital to a study's overall credibility as having accurate numbers.
Moving to Section 4, Benefiting Society, the ultimate shelter provided by research.
So all of this careful data collection and participant protection, it isn't happening in a vacuum. It has a much broader, real-world impact on our global community. Responsible publication means results should be disseminated accurately and fairly. Researchers must avoid duplicate submissions or making wild, misleading claims just to score a flashy headline. You know those mornings when you turn on the news and hear that a certain food is a miracle cure, and then literally the very next week, a different headline says it's terrible for you? Yeah. That often happens when researchers or institutions chase sensationalism over substance, which just clutters and confuses the scientific record for all of us. Responsible publication directly feeds into a much larger goal: social responsibility. Ultimately, research must benefit society. It must actively avoid doing harm and work to promote justice, equity, and sustainability for humanity as a whole. And this brilliantly illustrates exactly how we take these massive, sweeping moral principles and translate them into the daily grind of a researcher. It looks incredibly practical. Carefulness isn't just some abstract idea, it's the tedious but totally necessary act of sitting at a desk and double-checking your calculations so a bridge doesn't collapse. Intellectual property? That means taking the extra hour to trace back and provide proper citations for another scientist's hard work. Confidentiality translates into the deliberate act of strictly protecting a participant's identity in a published paper. By looking at it this way, you can see exactly how these high-level ethical principles connect directly to the daily, tangible, step-by-step actions of a working researcher. Which brings us to Section 5, the essence of trust, more than mere data collection. So we've gone through the rules, but I want to explicitly state why this entire framework actually matters to you sitting at home watching this. It all comes down to this core essence. Research ethics transforms scholarly inquiry from mere data collection into, quote, a practice of trust, integrity, and responsibility. It acts as an invisible shield protecting everyday people. By rigorously upholding all these rules, the honesty, the objectivity, the confidentiality, the social responsibility, researchers ensure that their work doesn't just selfishly advance their own careers. It ensures that they are truly advancing knowledge while serving humanity with absolute fairness and respect. So, if research ethics are indeed the backbone of trust, how will you evaluate the next scientific claim you encounter? The next time you read a bold headline or hear a brand new, groundbreaking statistic, I invite you to look just a little bit deeper. Ask yourself, were these core principles followed? Who actually funded this? Were their methods transparent or were they hidden in a black box? Keeping these load-bearing pillars in mind completely changes how you consume knowledge in your daily life. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and remember, keep questioning the world around you.